Hello there guys, it's Joey and this is a requested set for the Holy Death Mother, Sante de Morte. And the three items are all by request. And we're going to talk a little bit about engaging with this energy, because whilst I know a couple of people who do work with her, it's not an area, it's not a goddess which I have personal attachment to on any level, in so much as the specific goddess. I could relate to a lot of the symbolism, the story, the idea of holy death, and I wanted to take my time researching, reading. I read a lot of people's individual experiences, their interactions and their meditations and conversations, if you like, with Sante de Morte, and took a lot of the visual on into meditating with the idea of what I wanted this set to be. And the three particulars are requested: a candle, an oil and a salt, and I actually decided to go with a votive because it's the least expensive if the requestee requires maybe a red and a black one, or it's just a possibility, and that's why I decided to go with a votive, because if that is required or requested, it's relatively straightforward and inexpensive to do so. But getting back to the energy of Sante de Morte, the Bone Mother. I can't tell you how much I love the concept of the Bone Mother, and she is given a sort of a skeletal Mary in some interpretations, although she has her own energy and her own presentation. I was really interested to read the personal relationships and the sort of personality of this goddess as I was going through doing quite a bit of work on that side of things. So she defends the poor, sick and defenseless, and is a goddess very much about justice. She is, according to those that have interacted with her, quite all-encompassing. I read one account where they were saying like one side of her is quite pretty, and she likes all the pretty things, and she likes the candies and the sweets and the flowers and the pretty colours, and there are images of her dressed in many different shades and many different colours of lace, and people put very elaborate, almost flamenco style garb, attire on her statues, and then you have obviously the stereotypical statues of her and images of her, which is more like a Mary stance from biblical references, saint references, where she has her shroud on, and then there are many different shrouds, and the interaction with the different colours is to do with the different aspects of praying, worshipping and asking for her help. And she has this very motherly figure where she loves the broken and the harmed and the helpless and the poor, and takes them all into her bosom and protects those who cannot protect themselves. So there's this pretty sweet side, and then also this fierce protector, defender side. This duality, which was absolutely gorgeous, and I was like, right, so the set has to walk down the line. It has to be between pretty and fierce, between justice and motherly, so gentle but also ferocious, and it had to walk the line. And it's something I understand in terms of energy very well. That's quite how I see Babe in a lot of respects. Perhaps she's a little bit less motherly and more sensual, a little bit more, sexy warrior than this. But I understand that duality and that concept of looking at a death goddess and stepping outside of the idea of it being something to be feared or something negative. There was a lot of accounts of people being quite aggravated at the idea that she was devil-like or evil or anything like that, and she certainly wasn't. And in everybody's accounts that I read through, they'd had a very loving experience. She gave justice and was unlikely to hear revenge calls, was unlikely to grant the concepts of revenge if that's what you were requesting from her. And didn't really fall into that sort of vengeful camp. It was always about justice and protection. And the idea of the good death. I love the concept of the good death. This is something that I've spoken to in my path working, which of course is completely separate from this culture of Santa de Morte. But the idea of the beautiful death is something that I've spoken on a fair bit, and recently, that, you know, death can be a release, it can be a gentleness, it can be a kindness, and it's more like stepping into the unknown than it is what a lot of people, I think, fear. There are all forms of death, just as there are all forms of life. You know, there are many forms, but at that moment of release, that moment of actual death, is just the ending of one thing and the beginning of another, and the sorrow and the fear comes from those left behind, those in mourning, rather than the one who's passed on. So she also has energies of sort of hourglasses and shape-shifting. So the idea of time and then shape-shifting. So the idea of time here, the energy of time comes into the set with, you know, celebrating life and celebrating death. And I think that is the underpinning emotion that really walks its way through the spell set. There is obviously this duality, this pretty protectress, this fierce and gentleness, and this motherliness, and there's this holy death aspect as well. But I really loved the idea of her encouraging you to celebrate life and celebrate death, and just see them as parts of the whole and not give in to your fear. So those are the energies that have been interwoven into the set. We'll start with the Blessing Souls as a close-up, just to have a look at the individual items. Ooh, that was too far. They're very pretty, and I wanted them to be pretty. I read so many accounts where followers or worshippers had so many different experiences, but they all felt that it needed to be visually appealing. And as such, I wanted all the items here to be visually appealing. I wanted them to reflect the beautiful death, actually. The spell salts for me have a feeling of, you can, you know, if you were placing them into water, as the, almost as like if there was a funeral pyre, and the funeral pyre was a kind of Viking almost, but pushing the boat out to sea. And this is obviously drawing on the concepts which are more familiar to me than they are from the culture involved. But the idea of the body floating away on the tides, and that being, you know, the tides of time, of life and death, and these spell salts being placed in that water just to guide the other on, guide the soul on to the next phase, to say goodbye almost. but also to honour her in all her forms, in all her glory, in her holy death. So I was really pleased with how it all came out, actually. It took me a little bit longer than it might do normally, because I really wanted to make sure I had my head around the concepts first. So then we have the spell oil. This makes me think of altars that I have seen decorated in her honour. There is quite a lot of light, quite a lot of candles quite frequently in altars that I've seen to her, and as such I wanted that to be reflected. I wanted this beauty and this light to reflect through the spell oil in particular. I wanted it to make you think of 1,000 little lights being lit to honour Santa del Muerte. Just there you go. I got a very vivid vision then of people throwing rice, or I have no idea whether that's accurate or not. I'm going to have to, I'm going to leave that going, and I'm going to Google that, because that's just an image I had thrown into my head just there, and I need to know. Sorry about this, oh, there is. There is a throwing rice tradition with regards to good luck and prosperity within the hoodoo tradition. There you go. That's something I just had images. I just had images of like this festival of like them carrying statues or carrying images and like rice and petals being thrown. That's really quite bizarre. I don't usually get images at this point in the creation process. It was just like a confirmation of something in my mind. That's incredible. Wow. Right. So last but not least is the candle. As I said, it's a votive, and the votive is done, as I said, so if you wanted different colours, it would be inexpensive to do so. It would be easily done, sort of thing. But I decided to go with white for like her primary colour. For me, white is the primary colour of death, and I've discussed this at length, but it's supposed to be the original death colour, and it got switched to black in the West, I think in the Victorian era. Pretty sure that's when we started swapping colours around for all sorts of things. Pink for girls was swapped to girls in the Victorian era. Anyway, side note. So white for me is really very much about the death element. It's also very much about purity. And I like that duality here, and I think that duality applies really well to Santa del Muerte. The shimmy, I hope you can see. I'm pretty sure you can see. Yeah, oh god, look at this shimmy. Look at this shimmy, oh my goodness. The shimmy is a holographic, and it's meant to encompass all the many different colours. So it has sort of a rainbow sheen on it. And the reason for doing this, oh god, right there, oh beautiful, is because of the very many colours of shroud that are applied to Santa del Muerte, and people actually work with the different colour aspects of her in order to pray for different elements of their life. So I was reading about black, white and red, and then there are others that are blue, and I think there was a green, and there were many of them listed by many different individuals, and saying, you know, how working with different aspects of her colour magic almost applied to their witchcraft, if you like, or their praying, their petitioning of the universe. Again, I think it's very pretty. I really like it. I wanted it to be floral and reflect that side of her as well, but it also has quite a strength to it. There isn't too much colour. I wanted the colour to all be present, but I didn't want an overflux of colour, so I wanted it to be quite strong, quite streamlined, and Holy Death, again, I really liked how the white really reflected that. Okay, so that is the requested spell set for the Holy Death, Sante de Muerte. I hope you like it, and many blessings.